Hello and welcome back to Just Follow Joy. My name's Ariana, not Joy, and I'm a human design guide and teacher. And today I am so excited to share something that I've been thinking about for a while. I actually shared a short video version of this on Instagram. So if you want like a super quick snippy little bite of this to understand what we're going to talk about today, you can go to my Instagram to check that out. But it's about what you're here to talk about. What are you here to share? What are you here to communicate? What are you here to express? And in what way? And so we're going to talk about all of that today. Before we dive into it, I just want to say a few things. The first thing is that whatever we go over, this is not something that you have to fit into because human design is not, I mean, it's somewhat a prescriptive system because it says like, hey, this is the way you're built. Knowing that, it's probably going to be easiest for you to use this energy to get what you want if you do X, Y, and Z. But for the most part, it's just showing you how you are built already. So when I say something like, you have your unconscious Mercury in gate 24 and a defined throat center, I'm not going to be telling you like what you have to do with that. There's nothing that you have to do other than what you are going to be drawn naturally towards doing. Because really what your design is showing you is what is natural for you because this is you. This is your energy. So all of that is to say, none of this is something you have to try to do or fit into or do better. Like you don't have to try to apply it more to your life. Just the knowing that this is the way you are built and the knowledge, it alone is going to be what helps you most. And then secondly, I know that some people might watch this who are, into astrology. I love astrology personally myself. And you might say like, a lot of this is covered in astrology. Look at where Mercury is in your astrological birth chart. Look at the house, look at the zodiac sign, look at its aspects, look at things to do with the third house even, and probably more. I'm not a traditional Western astrology expert. I know some stuff. And that is true. I don't think that any of that goes out the window because I think that astrology is still a wildly helpful system. I am not a human design teacher who thinks that just because human design exists, we no longer need any of the systems upon whose shoulders it stands. Like I don't look at astrology just as this thing to calculate the human design chart. If you don't know, that's how we get a human design chart. We use astrological information. I don't look at it just in that way. I think that on its own, it's already a really powerful system. And then I still use astrology on a daily basis. And to be honest, I don't actually know any human design readers who don't think that astrology is still really useful on its own and discount it. Does that mean there are none? No, I couldn't possibly know that because I don't know everybody in the human design community. And I also see a lot of overlap with my human design and my astrological chart. And I'll show you a little bit how that works with the Mercury placements in particular. The other thing I'm going to say is that if you don't have your human design chart yet, this is a really good video to have that for. So if you don't, go down to the description and I'm going to have a link to get your free chart on my website, or you can just go to www.justfollowjoy.com/free chart and find it there. But otherwise, it's going to be kind of difficult to know what I'm talking about and which of these things apply to you in which way. If you want to know what any of the stuff I'm saying means in particular for you and your chart, you can access any of that stuff in the Just Follow Joy library. In particular, I would recommend that you look at the Gates and Channels mini guide, which goes over the 64 gates and the 36 channels of the human design body graph in a very easy breezy beginner way. It will give you the information that you need, the gifts and the challenges of the gate, like what to expect from it, what it means about you in these very everyday explanations in plain English kind of ways. There isn't a lot of that like confusing human design speak, which frankly, I don't think is very helpful for people who are just starting out in the system. Like you can use that, you can know it. By all means, if you're interested, do that. But for me, I was like, this is a little overly esoteric. Like I just kind of want to know what this means on a practical daily basis. And if you are the same way, then the Gates and Channels mini guide is definitely going to be for you. It's only $22 and it's also my most popular product. It is definitely the best seller on my site. And then lastly, I know this is a bit of a long intro, but if you like Just Follow Joy, if you love Just Follow Joy, or you just enjoy this video or episode, if you are watching on YouTube, if you could like this video and subscribe, then that is really helpful to the channel. It's going to help get this out in front of other people who will like it and love it. And more importantly, this is how you can get free human design information from me on the regular and never miss an episode. So when we are talking about what you are here to share in human design, where we're going to start is the throat center. And before I forget to tell you, the throat center is the square that is below the two triangles at the top of the human design body graph. So at the head of what I call your triangle butt person, you have the crown center or the head center, which is an upward facing triangle. Below it, you have the ajna or mind center, which is a downward facing triangle. And then you have the throat center, which is a square right where it looks like the throat of the person would be. Figures. So if you don't know, in human design, the throat center is about expression, whether that is communication, like speaking, talking, writing, or taking action. So it's what they call manifestation in human design. It also has to do with quote unquote metamorphosis, because essentially the throat center is this place where all the energy of the human design chart is pushed towards, and then it is transformed or metamorphized into something, whether that is speaking or taking action. And basically, the throat center is an outlet for whatever energy it picks up on, whether that is from another one of your energy centers or from an external source. And we're going to go over what both of those kinds of things can show up as. And one good thing to know is that while your throat center does show you, quote unquote, what you are here to share, it's really more about what kind of energy you're here to share and how you'll do it and how often you can expect yourself to. So if you have a defined throat center, meaning that your throat center is colored in, you will have a very consistent way of speaking and expressing yourself. And it really means that you're basically going to have the same voice for your entire life. So that doesn't mean that your voice never develops or evolves. However, the defined throat center is just like any other defined energy center. The way that it processes and shows up with energy is definite. It is defined. It's locked in. So it's going to show up in quite predictable ways for the rest of your days. Little rhyme there. That's nice. Also, how you speak and what you speak about won't really change depending on who you're around. To be clear, it's not that you can't adjust your voice to your audience. It doesn't mean that at all, but it's not going to be as natural for you as it would be for someone with an undefined throat center, because it's not meant to be natural for you. If you have a defined throat center, you already have your own energy that you're here to consistently express. So you basically have a buffer against external energy, which someone with an undefined throat center would pick up on naturally, whether they want to or not. And the reason for this is because you are meant to be able to share your energy consistently. Like, it's not, you don't need something coming in and getting in the way. You're here to speak with your own distinctive voice, baby. You got to own it. And I know that some people with defined throat centers feel that, they don't do that, but most of the time it's because there's conditioning that they can't do that. There's conditioning around the defined throat center of like, the way that you talk is not right. You should change that. But unfortunately for the defined throat center and anyone around them who is upset at that, they can't. Like, it's going to feel so difficult for them because they can't do it and they're not supposed to. Now, if you have a defined throat center, you can pretty easily know what you're here to use your voice for by looking at two things. One, the energy centers that your throat center is connected to, and two, which channels connect the throat center to that or those energy centers. And like I said before, when we're talking about like what you're here to share, what you're here to talk about, it's not usually like this one topic. It's more like a type of energy that you're going to be sharing. Because remember, with the energy centers, that's like a category of energy that is being processed in that center. And then even with the gates and channels, like those are themes of energy. So it's not like if you have this gate, you're going to be talking a lot about coffee or politics or corgis and their squishy little butts. Really more of the theme in what or how you share. And that's going to be consistent and pretty predictable for you. So here are some examples to show you what I mean. First, we have my good friend Nico. So Nico's throat center is connected to his mind, aka the Ajna center, via channel 4323, which is called the channel of structuring. And the mind center represents certainty, answers, concepts, opinions, worldviews, to name a few. It's essentially along the lines of like your thoughts and your answers and coming up with answers. So this means that he is literally here to speak his mind. And trust me, he does. But we can get more information on specifically how that will show up for him and the way that he's going to be doing that by looking at the channel that connects the mind center to the throat center. So for Nico, he's here to speak through the themes of channel 4323, which is called the channel of structuring and also has a nickname, the genius freak or the freak to genius channel. I can never remember if it's the genius to freak or freak to genius. Whatever. You get what I mean. But this is all about sharing new, weird, possibly groundbreaking insights that are on a whole different wavelength than most people and arrive spontaneously. So you don't really know why you know that. It's just like, oh, I know. Here we go. Here it is. This just plopped in. And these insights that come to these people are usually pretty out there. It's called the Freak Genius channel for a reason. So depending on Nico's audience, he can either sound like an alien freak and people will be like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Because they can't relate to it. It's too out there for them. Or to some people who are open to this, they may see that there's genius in what he's saying and go, oh my God, I've never heard someone put it that way. And I've never thought of it that way, but I can see how that could be really true. And I can tell you that throughout his entire life, he has had this experience. And it's really interesting because sometimes he will say something to me and I'm like, wow, that's so profound. And other times he'll say something to me and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? But I know it is all part of Nico's genius. And now the keynote for this channel is I know, meaning that when he says something, it is with the certainty that he knows what he is saying is so. It is not an I think, I believe, perhaps like it is pure knowing. So people who have channel 4323 are known for being like pretty confident about what they're saying because they just know, like there's no question for them. They're like, yeah, this is obviously the way it is. So we see here that tells us a lot about what and how he's going to be sharing already. Second, we have something very different. We have the chart of my good friend McKenna. So McKenna has her throat center connected to two centers. She has it connected to her emotional solar plexus center via channel 2212 and her ego, also called heart center, via channel 2145. So this means that because the solar plexus center is about emotions, among a few other things, but mostly about emotion, she's here to talk about how she is feeling emotionally and what she wants or what she's driven and motivated to get, because that's what the ego slash heart center slash will slash resource, so many names to that center. That's what that one's all about. So her throat is connected to her solar plexus center through channel 2212, which is called the channel of openness and is understandably known for being quite emotionally open, compassionate, charming in how open and compassionate they are, artistic, possibly even a little bit dramatic. These people can be very captivating when they speak. I like to say that it's almost like watching a performance when they are talking, in particular when they are talking about how they're feeling. When these people are in the mood, they can really work a room and their openness is incredibly magnetic. And in fact, a lot of famous people, a lot of actors and actresses have channel 2212. It's just a very captivating thing because these people happen to be great at sharing and connecting and being open and vulnerable with other people and in the higher expression of this. And then on the other hand, they're also good at making other people feel understood through that openness and that vulnerability. So these people can also be really, really great listeners. In the shadow version of this, they are not always the best listeners, but there are so many octaves of this. But for McKenna in particular, she's actually a professional therapist, and I can see how this channel works for her so well when it comes to how she connects to her clients, because she's so open and understanding and holds a lot of grace and compassion for other people with their emotions. And it's really easy for her to access emotion and tell other people how she feels. And then her throat center is connected to her ego center through channel 2145, which is called the channel of money. It is not entirely about money, but it is about basically directing other people in order to hit a goal to obtain resources, whether for yourself or for the group. But she's essentially here to tell the group what to do so that she and everyone else can get what they want. The only thing I can say about this is that usually she will have a place that she wants us to go when we go out. Like if we're if we're going out on a Friday night or something, she's like, guys, hear me out. Hear me out. I say we go to this place and then we go there. And if we want to go somewhere else, then we go there. But we usually end up going where she wants to go. Now we have the undefined throat center. So if you're like me and you have an undefined throat center, you will have an inconsistent way of speaking and expressing yourself. And the reason for this is the undefined throat center picks up, amplifies, and exhibits whatever like external voice energy is around it at any given time. So if you have an undefined throat center, you don't create voice energy for yourself, basically. Like you pick up the flavor of what's being said and how it's being said from around you. So when the energy around you changes, which it will inevitably do, energy is constantly in flux around us, so will the way that your undefined throat center will express itself. So this means a few things. The first thing is that you do not need to expect yourself to have something to talk about all the time. And you definitely don't have to expect yourself to have one thing or like one way that you do that all the time. If you have this in your chart, the reason is because your throat center is not connected to another center, because a center gets defined when it's connected to another center through a channel. So unless there is something quote unquote hooking up your throat center to another center temporarily, whether that is a transit in the cosmos, so planets moving to a certain place, or it's another person's aura being close enough to you that it's activating something in you, then you may just not have anything to say. And like, that's totally okay. And I think that this is important for anyone with an undefined throat center to know, but I think it's particularly helpful for business owners to know because when I first started in content creation and marketing for my business, I would kind of freak out when I didn't have something to post or send an email out about. Because I was like, I have to stay top of mind. I have to always be sharing. I have to always be talking, and I have to stay consistent. I have to talk about the same thing all the time. But since I have an undefined throat center, that's like, that's not necessary. I can't expect myself to be that way all the time. I don't need to share something until I actually have something to share. And then if I share, even if it is like talking about the same thing, I'm probably not going to be talking about it in the same way. And that's all right. My voice adapts and changes. And that's the way that it is supposed to be. Because actually, if you have an undefined throat center, like you're here to reflect back what the collective energy is talking about or like what's going on, what other people need to say. This is why reflectors and part of, why they're here is to pick up on all this energy and then say, hey, this is what's going on with the collective. So if you have an undefined throat center, you have this real gift of picking up what's like in the ether and saying things that are on everybody's mind or like saying what's going on in your community and giving a voice to that. And someone else might say, that's so weird you said that. That's so fitting for what I'm going through right now or what's happening in this community. Like, how did you pick up on that? How did you know? It's because when the undefined throat center allows itself to just speak what needs to be said now and what it's actually feeling, then it says the right thing. But if you force yourself to, then it's going to feel out of sync. Also, another really, really important thing to know. I know this kind of sounds like you don't have your own voice, but trust me, that is not true. You absolutely have your own voice. It is simply that the way you share your voice is going to change a lot throughout your life, and it's going to be more changeable and adaptable and quote unquote chameleonic than it would be for someone with a defined throat center. And something good to note is that some of the most powerful singers and speakers in the world have undefined throat centers. You'll just notice that their voices and their expressions vary sometimes pretty greatly throughout the different eras of their lives. So Cher, Aretha Franklin, Taylor Swift all have undefined throat centers. I like to point out with Taylor Swift in particular, she literally has a tour called Eras because she's had all these different ways that she expresses herself, and the throat center is about expression. However, even though you are not going to have like one consistent way that you share for the rest of your life, like all the time, you can still get clues as to how you'll be sharing by looking at the gates coming out of your throat center. Because it's still, even though it's not going to be consistent, it will be predictable. So these gates that come out of an undefined center are called dormant potentials, and they get activated by external sources of energy. And I have an entire video on this. I'll link that below as well if you want to check it out. But the thing about these gates is that even though these gates won't be active all the time like they would be for a defined throat center, they will be active many times in your life. And of all the themes of the throat center, these are going to be the ones that you can predict will show up the most. And that's because there will be many times when you receive this energy from some external source. At least once a month, you're going to get another gate that connects to the gate coming out of your undefined throat center. And then even if it's only for half a day, you will feel like you have a defined throat center and that you have something to say. We'll look at my chart so I can give you an example. So I have an undefined throat center, like I said, and I have gate 56 defined within it as a dormant potential. So a little bit about gate 56. It's called stimulation. In I Ching, it's called the wanderer or wandering. And it's all about metaphors, stories, distractions, lightness, levity. It's about like your personal way of explaining something and not necessarily through cold, hard facts. So unsurprisingly, I share a lot of stories. I also explain things through story or examples or hypotheticals or fantastical situations. I tend to speak very metaphorically, which can help a lot of people, but it also means that I tend to struggle with communicating with people who take everything very literally. Like one of the big things in my life is I've felt misunderstood because I'll give an example or a metaphor and someone like truly just will not understand the point of what I'm saying. They'll take like the literal thing that I'm using and say, this doesn't make sense. Why did you say that? And I'm like, because that's not the point. Read between the lines. This is a metaphor. I've come to understand some people just don't think that way. Literally, it's in the human design body graph. Like some people are just designed to understand cold hard facts, and that's okay. And I do have a gift for helping other people understand a concept that's been difficult for them to get through cold hard or dry facts or statistics or whatever, you know? And in fact, when people say that they like to learn from me, that's usually why. And on top of that, Gate 56 is about like adding some humor. It's got a little bit of like this shadow of distraction, which means that like it can sometimes say, give stories or metaphors or things that distract from the point rather than enriching the point. But at the same time, sometimes I add a little joke or whatever because it keeps you actually focused on what I'm talking about. It engages you. That's another thing that people have told me that they like about how I teach. But here's the thing with this being a dormant potential. So this energy is technically only quote unquote on for me when a transit or someone else's aura provides me with the energy of the defined throat center. So if gate 11, which is in the channel 1156, was activated, then I would have a defined throat center and also a defined mind center as well. Or if somebody else, for example, my friend Caitlin, she has channel 11 in her chart. When we are together, I might feel like I have more to say. I have more stories to tell. I have more jokes to make. And actually, it makes so much sense to me because I make so many jokes around Caitlin and I'm like, I am so funny. And she's like the best friend. So she's like, yeah, you really are. So basically, like when I do get that energy from outside of myself, then the way that I am going to express my throat center energy is going to be through the energy of gate 56. And if somebody else with I'm going so deep with this today, if somebody else with a defined throat center who has different gates and different channels was in my aura, then I'm going to pick up on their defined throat center energy and their gates and channels as well. But gate 56 will always be activated when that happens for me. Now, one thing to note about throat center channels and gates is that if any gate, channel or channels, or part of a channel coming out of your throat center is unconscious, which means that it is shown in red in your chart, you may not realize that you talk, speak, or express yourself in this way, or that you talk about these things as often as you do. And that's because for the most part, this is unconscious for you. That's why they're called unconscious gates. It's not that you could never see them. It's not that it could never be clear to you that this is the case, but it means that like you just aren't going to as naturally see that because it's not part of how you see yourself. The personality gates, which are the conscious gates, those are in black. Those are generally going to tell you more about like how you see yourself, what you see yourself talk or hear yourself talking about the most. So you may not see yourself that way, but the people around you are quite likely to see it. And in the human design textbook, they give an example actually of a guy with channel 1156 in his chart about how he's always telling stories, but his entire 1156 channel is unconscious or it's a design channel. And so people around him are like, this dude will just never shut up. He just always has a tale to tell. But if you asked him, why do you tell so many stories? He'd go, what are you talking about? I don't think I do that. But if you showed him the examples, he might be like, oh, yeah, I guess I do that. Another good example of this is the founder of human design, Alan Robert Krakauer, aka Ra Uruhu. Like Nico, he had channel 4323, but it was entirely unconscious for him. So he often didn't realize that he was, having this freak genius moment or this freak genius download until he kind of encountered other people's responses. Or you could look at it as like he wouldn't know this was happening until he like literally said it. And then he was like, oh, I didn't even realize I was thinking that until I said it. So basically, you're just not going to be probably as aware of it happening. And there's another example that I have for you, which is I gave a reading to this woman with channel 2212 once. And I was saying, like, you are someone who's here to speak your emotions. Like, you are connected to those and you can use your voice to get connected to them. And she said, that's actually been the hardest thing for me to do in my life. I don't feel connected to my emotions at all. And it was funny because her entire channel was unconscious. The entire thing was in red. And I was like, okay, so one, you might actually already be doing it. You just don't realize it. Or it could be that that connection is there, but it's literally not until you talk that you realize how you feel. So it's even more important for you to be using your voice to get in connection with that if you feel disconnected from your emotions on a regular basis. So that's all about the throat center, which on its own would give you a lot of information. But there are two other things that I recommend you look at, and those are your Mercury gates. Like in astrology, Mercury represents what you are meant to express and communicate, and a little bit of how. It also represents your mind. So it might be what you think about or focus on a lot. Now, this is where I know some people in astrology might say, like, this is covered by your Mercury placement in astrology. And absolutely, like I said before in the intro, no qualms about that. However, in human design, we also consider the 64 hexagrams from I Ching, which is it's called the Book of Changes. It's from China. It's been around for thousands of years, and it represents 64 universal themes of humanity. And so one of the most foundational and fundamental parts of human design and what makes the body graph is this idea that we have the wheel of the zodiac. So we have the astrological calendar, and overlaid on that are the 64 gates. And so we have each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, and then those are divided up or like chopped up into a roughly 5.3 gates. So sometimes certain gates are between two signs, or they have aspects of both signs. And then depending on, the degree, minute, second of the placement of the planet in astrology, that will tell you, yes, what zodiac sign it's in, but also what gate of the I Ching it is in. So when we are looking at the gates in human design, they carry information from I Ching, but they also carry information from the astrological zodiac sign. So we don't lose that aspect. The way we look at this is that we basically have taken certain aspects of the zodiac sign, and that is represented by this specific gate of the I Ching. And the other thing I'll tell you is that in human design, because we take information from two times, not just your birth time, but also 3 months before your birth time, which technically it's actually 6 months after your conception, but we can only know what that is working backwards from your birth time. So we have two Mercury placements. The first one is your conscious or personality Mercury. And your conscious Mercury gate is the main theme that you are here to talk about and will notice yourself talking about the most. In Gene Keys, which is a sister system to human design, it's fittingly labeled as your relating sphere. Good job, Richard. I'm very on the nose with that one. So if we look at my chart, for example, I have my conscious Mercury placement in gate 18, which is called the gate of correction. So gate 18 is about identifying and pointing out what's wrong or what isn't working, i.e., what needs correcting, hence the name correction. So it can lean towards perfectionism, and sometimes it can be like annoyingly or over exacting, like that's not quite right. But it does this for a reason. It's so that we can have systems, processes, organizations, and quote unquote ways of doing things and like collective approaches that serve us all in the best way possible. And something good to know about gate 18 is that it is supposed to be used for collective things. So it's not meant to be used on this personal level, like going up to someone and being like, you are doing this wrong. I don't like the way that you chew your gum. Like, unfortunately, it can be used that way. But it's really more of like, hey, this way that we're doing things, I'm not saying this in a personal way. This is not a personal attack on anybody, but this is not right. It needs to be fixed. So it's not personal at all, though it can sometimes be misconstrued that way. And sometimes if people aren't using it correctly, they can accidentally attack people on a personal level. Ask me how I know that. And then on top of this, it's also about challenging and being very aware of and fearing ultimately authority. Because when you challenge a system, who's keeping that in place? It's authority. It is the powers that be that keep that in place. And especially if this is a big, widespread system, then that authority might be pretty great and it might be pretty scary. So gate 18 is known as the fear of authority, or it's an intuition for authority as well, because when you are going to challenge something, you have to be very aware of when authority is coming to get you or it's clamping down on you. And it's also another modern take on gate 18 is it's identifying the authority within. So it's identifying where there is authority, period. And there may be a fear of it if it's external, but it could be recognizing in someone else, like, this is your authority. Like, you have authority. I see it in you, right? So it could be this gift for helping other people recognize their own authority, which is going to come into play in a second. You'll see how that makes sense here. But for me, I can 1000% see how this shows up in my life. So first off, I teach human design, which is literally all about challenging external authority by living as your own authority. And human design on its own challenges a lot about the way that the world is. And its biggest, there are so many parts to human design, but honestly, It's about looking at yourself as the own authority in your life because as we move forward past 2027, and this is honestly already happening, as we move forward, the energy of the earth is going to be much more supportive of us living as individuals. And it's not going to be living under the thumb of the collective or of these top-down hierarchical structures that say you must live this way, this external system is the authority. Instead, it's that we are the authority. So we need to learn how our bodies talk to us so that we can use that as the authority that guides us. And that's like the whole point of human design. Know how you're designed so you know how your body talks to you and you know how it gives you direction and it tells you what to do. And that will help you live as your true self and live as this free individual. Second, I am very focused on being as accurate and exacting and true as possible in how I speak. And in Gene Keys, interestingly, the gift of gate 18 is integrity. So it's about staying in integrity with the truth. And that is very, very important to me because I want things to work at their best level truly. And again, gate 18 is a collective gate, so it's here to serve the collective. And the idea is that if a system isn't really doing its best, then it's not serving us in the best way possible. And so why are we keeping this in place? We need to dismantle this in one way or another because, gate 18 is also a Libra gate. It's like, this is not helping everybody. Like, this isn't serving the people, power to the people, equality. And then lastly, I definitely do have a heightened awareness and fear of authorities coming in to shut me down when I point out something that I think should be changed or is not serving us and needs to be corrected or needs to be broken down and kicked out entirely. And interestingly enough, the human design space is also where I see this happening the most because I am somebody who, in the way that I teach human design, I basically openly challenge parts of the system that I think are broken. And they may be what people teach traditionally. They may be, quote unquote, what Ra said, but I don't think that they are empowering in the least bit and that we don't necessarily have to use them anymore. Or maybe we never did because, first off, Ra was not God. He was not Jesus. He was not a prophet. He was somebody who received this information and then built a system based off of it. He operationalized the information that he got from the voice, this source of the information, and shared it with us to make it usable and understandable and practical on a daily basis. But he was just a man. He's just a man, like he wasn't perfect. He did apply his own perspectives on this system, some of them very limiting and disempowering to many different people. And secondly, he himself actually said that this was a system that was meant to grow and evolve. And before he died, he was trying to create something called the Enlightened I Ching. He never got around to it, unfortunately. But there was this idea, he looked at human design as an incomplete system and not necessarily something to adhere to as dogma. He said, like, don't just believe me, just like go out and try this stuff. And please don't look at me as this guru leader. And in my opinion, some of his actions said otherwise, but that's for a different day. And the thing is that there are a lot of hardliners in human design who will get very upset when anybody approaches or teaches this system in a way other than what they think is traditional and correct, like kind of the way that it's always been taught. And so they will come and they will attack you. They will try to discredit you. And so as a result, and I am sad to say this, but in the past, I really have held back what I truly think and what I think I'm really here to say because I've been afraid of being attacked publicly. And the thing about that is, one, you're never going to make everyone happy with what you say. Someone will always want to get mad at you. They will always project onto you. They will bring their own shit and put it on you. Two, I'm a 5-1 profile. I'm like here to be crucified for what I say. A lot of the time, it's easier for people to project onto me. People are just going to not like me, and I just have to deal with that. And third, when I am saying something, it is coming from deep integrity. I will not say something that is out of integrity with what I believe or with my values, or in a way that I think will lead someone astray. I'm not going to do that. So when I say something, I know that that's the case. And honestly, someone else not liking what I'm saying or projecting their own shit onto me or knocking me down, it is not a good enough reason for me to not say it. Because if I feel like it is an integrity and I'm supposed to be saying it, I'm going to say it and I have the right to do that. So it's just not a good enough reason for me anymore if somebody's going to get mad at me or tell me to shut up. I'm over it now. I'm really over it. And anybody who gets mad about it, get mad about it. Like, I don't really care. Also, by the way, like my Chiron, if you look at my astrological chart and you see where that would lie if you count Chiron as part of the human design chart, which some people do, is also in gate 18. So that's like where I have some of my biggest wounding around what I share. Anyway, next we have your unconscious or design Mercury. So what's interesting about your conscious Mercury is it's going to be what you actually talk about and what you are probably most aware of talking about. And you could probably connect the dots the same way that I did just now with gate 18 and how that shows up in my life. But your unconscious Mercury gate is going to be more of what you talk about or express, but it's going to be without realizing, because like we mentioned before, any unconscious placements, it's not that you can't see it or it can't be brought to your attention in one way or another, but it's not going to be as easily accessed as a personality or conscious gate. And human design teacher Eden Carpenter calls it the energy behind what you're saying, which I think is brilliant and I think is a really wonderful way of putting it. So you'll see here with my chart, my unconscious Mercury is in gate 53, which is called the gate of starting things. And gate 53 is about exactly what it sounds like. It is about starting things. In particular, it's actually about starting cycles. But it's about more than that. And I take this part a little bit more from Gene Keys, where Richard Rudd says it's about expansion and it's about this sense of freedom to do so. And it's funny because it wasn't really until I actually really thought about my Mercury gates and I made the reel on my Instagram and I wrote this article that I realized how accurate this is for me, because it showed me the energy behind what I'm talking about. It is more of that push behind what I'm saying. So while I speak and think a lot about challenging norms and the authorities that come with those norms and how am I going to challenge them and what's going to happen and should I say this and how can I say this in a way that is clear and in integrity but also helps people think differently, my message with Just Follow Joy, everything behind the gate 18 energy is one of personal expansion and freedom. That is the real reason for and true energy behind what I say and teach. I want to help people find freedom, growth, and expansion, and be able to rise into their highest selves by breaking down systems that are holding them back from doing that. And I'll tell you that I've done a lot of work with human design and I've also done a lot of personal development and I think about this kind of stuff a lot. So that was obvious to me when I just like sat down and kind of interpreted it for myself. But if you're new to this stuff and you're not as familiar with human design, Gene Keys, etc., like it might not be as simple for you. Like it might take a little bit more time to see. But anyway, that is it from me today. I hope this helped. If you made it to this point in the episode or the video, if you're watching on YouTube, please let me know what your throat center definition is, what the gates or the channels are coming out of that, and then what your Mercury gates are. I think it would be really, really cool. And if you have any conclusions that you've drawn from that and it makes a lot of sense to you in your life, I'd love to hear it. But anyway, thanks for being here. As always, you rock, and I will talk to you next time.